What's going on, everybody? My name is Ryan Holmes. I'm with Snoplanks. We are joined today by some amazing guests. First, Ashley Nickel, skier, snowboarder, fitness guru.
Oh yeah.
She's gonna be helping us out today. We also are honored to have Kevin Boss, the owner of this amazing Boss Sports Performance that we're gonna be working out of today. Super Bowl champion, tight end for the New York Giants. Just an amazing friend of mine. And we're gonna be working through some movements today. The goal of the video today is we so often hear of people talking about in the early part of the season being so out of shape, being so unprepared in terms of having their body ready to perform on the mountain at the highest potential. So the goal here today is to be able to provide some simple movements, some resources, some exercises that you can be doing at home, at the gym, in your garage, that'll really get you prepared for the ski season this year to allow for you to perform at the highest of abilities right out of the gate, but also really prevent injury. So Kevin's gonna talk a little bit about kind of what we're gonna be doing today and the kind of goals of these movements.
Yeah, so I'm super excited and honored to collaborate with some really good friends here and with Ryan and James here and having Ashley to model. But you know, when we're talking about the physical preparation side of skiing and snowboarding and just kind of the nature of the sport where you're ultimately sliding around on a slick surface, you're bound to kind of be put into some positions that are potentially going to be harmful or even dangerous. And so with our approach to training our athletes, or our goal is to ultimately, we want to put our athletes into these positions or into these movements in a controlled environment first, right? And that's the weight room. We want to make sure that these guys are getting comfortable and strong in these positions first before they go out onto the mountain and they experience these new positions and movements that they haven't experienced for over a year. So that's kind of our approach, is getting them comfortable in kind of a controlled environment, getting them strong in there, and just hopefully setting them up for a successful and healthy season up on the mountain. And so kind of what we put together today is I've hand selected 6 different exercises that we're gonna just kind of roll through in a circuit style fashion. The emphasis is full body, or I should say, we're gonna hit full body, but the emphasis is really targeting core, which is our foundation. And when I'm talking core, I'm thinking nipples to knees and everywhere around. That's our core, okay? A lot of times people just think core is a sexy six-pack. No, our core is our foundation, right? If we're building a house, right, we wanna have this super solid foundation before we start stacking things on top of it. So we're gonna really target our core and then our lower half, our legs, because ultimately we're gonna be up on our feet, we're gonna be using our legs, like I said, hopefully, right, we're not falling on the ground too much, but we wanna get really strong on our feet here. And then we're gonna, like I said, circuit through that in a circuit style fashion where we can kind of keep our heart rate elevated. The main emphasis, the goal is strength and stability with this circuit, but we're hoping that we can keep our heart rate elevated and we can get a little conditioning byproduct from the circuit and kind of how we're gonna execute through the movements.
Awesome, so let's rock and roll. Hopefully you guys enjoy these movements in preparation for the ski season.
We're starting here with our mobility, the first part of our warm-up. We always want to mobilize our joints before we start thinking stabilize and strengthen. So a lot of, particularly snowboarders, there's a lot of hip movement that we don't really, from the naked eye, understand how much hips are involved with snowboarding. So this is our go-to for just kind of some basic hip mobility. We call these our hip rotations. So they're set up in a 90-90 shin box here, where our front shin is gonna be parallel facing one direction, and then they're both gonna rotate here. Ryan's gonna do kind of a regressed movement of this, where if you don't quite have the adequate hip mobility to do this like Ashley's gonna do, okay, you can just keep one hand on the ground like Ryan has here. So you wanna think about keeping your feet still, and while your knees are gonna rotate. So from that position, okay, you see Ryan rotates, okay, Ashley does it with her hands off the ground. She can extend her arms too and make it even harder. So when you see, go back one more time, guys, and you'll rotate back and forth 5 times. So on this lead leg, okay, her hip is in external hip rotation, and then this trail leg, we're in internal rotation, okay? So that's why it's, again, another good bang for your buck exercise, where we're working external hip rotation mobility and then internal hip mobility as well, okay? So like I said, you just rotate back and forth 5 per side. So those are the hip rotations. Okay, so the next mobility exercise or stretch that we want to do is we want to isolate our adductor and groin. There's going to be some exercises that we do in our strength circuit here later on that are going to really isolate and target that groin and adductor. So we want to make sure that we're stretching that out and kind of waking it up a little bit. There's also a movement that we'll talk about, like I mentioned earlier, where we kind of find ourselves in some awkward positions sometimes while we're skiing or snowboarding, specifically skiing there. So we want to get comfortable in these positions here, and we want to wake some of those muscles up before we strengthen them. So these are our adductor rock backs. We're going to be hand set up. Why don't you set your hands just right underneath you there, Ash? Okay, created a tabletop position. This leg is going to try to go straight, okay? And we're just going to rock our whole body back. Just thinking, sit your butt towards your heel, leg is straight, toes forward, and then you're going to come back. Good. And you're just going to do 5 rock backs, okay? So go to a position that you're able to feel a good stretch in this leg, and you're able to maintain a neutral lumbar position. Good. And we'll do usually probably anywhere between 5 to 10 per side, kind of depending on how tight your adductors are. Okay, so the last exercise here, or mobility exercise that we're going to do here, is called our squat pumps with diagonal twists. So what we're trying to target here is lengthening out our posterior chain, specifically our hamstrings, but also getting a lot of T-spine mobilized here. So a lot of snowboarders are really stuck in our T-spine, just men in general, honestly. So we want to make sure we get that T-spine, that thoracic spine moving before we hit the slope. So Ashley and Ryan are going to get a little bit of a wider stance, okay? They're going to reach down and grab their toes, and then we're going to drop our butt to the ground as far as we can, trying to keep our chest up, and then we're going to go butt up. That's a squat pump, that's number 1. We'll go back down, squat pump number 2. Okay, this is where we're kind of lengthening those hamstrings, and then we're going to go back down, finish down with our butt down, chest up, and then Ashley's going to take her right hand, twist to the sky. This is where we're just targeting some T-spine, trying to open up there. And then go other side, follow that hand with your eyes. You notice how Ashley's a little bit more mobilized in her T-spine than stiff Ryan over here. Okay, and then we'll go 2 squat pumps. There's a reason I'm not demonstrating. Good. And then we'll go, after those 2 squat pumps, we'll do again a diagonal twist each side there. Perfect. Good job, guys. Keep going, right? Okay, so a quick bang for your buck activation exercise where we're gonna get a lot of glute, a little bit of hamstring, some core, as well as, again, groin and adductor here is with an exercise that we use a lot called our hip thrust growing fly. So Ryan and Ashley are gonna demonstrate here. When we do any sort of single leg hip thrust, we wanna make sure this heel is stacked underneath our knee, okay? And we're gonna reach this foot to the ceiling there, sole of your foot to the ceiling. Again, knee, heel stacked. We're gonna do 5 single leg hip bridges or hip thrusts. Good, and then after the 5th one, we'll imagine that this is your 5th rep here. Now we're gonna hold, okay? And we're just gonna drop this leg, lower it as slow as we can to the floor. There we go. Now this is where we're getting some core, right? We don't want our hips to open up, so Ashley wants to keep her hips square, and she's again recruiting her groin and adductor to pull that leg back up. Good, we'll just do about 5 or 6 what we call growing flies per side there. Okay, and that's what, like I said, our single leg hip thrust with growing fly. Perfect. Okay, so our last activation, again, kind of a full body activation, but really targeting a lot of core here is what we use a long lever inchworm for this, okay? So like a traditional inchworm, you're gonna walk your hands out, but instead of stopping at push-up position where you could do push-up there, we're gonna go walk our hands a little bit further where it's just really isolating our core a lot more, okay? Where we're gonna try to resist some flexion and extension there. So Ryan and Ashley are gonna demonstrate here. You're gonna walk your hands out as far as you can, as long as you're able to keep a neutral spine there. There we go, and then you're gonna walk feet to hands. And I like this too because we're getting, again, kind of some lengthening out of the backside there. Okay, so usually we'll do 5 or 6 reps there with our long lever inchworms. Okay, so our first exercise in our strength circuit here is gonna be a 1-arm band press with a 1-arm band row. And so what we've done with hand selecting all these different kind of bang for your buck exercises is we've set them up where there's very minimal equipment, where we've picked the exercises that don't require a lot of equipment. A lot of these will require different bands. These are bands that you can purchase on Amazon, or you can come purchase them here, but we want to set up a circuit here that you can do in the comfort of your own home, and then we'll give you also some kind of progressions or regressions to the exercise that, you know, Ryan's going to demonstrate an exercise here that would be a progression from this if you do have some weight. So like I said, this first exercise requires 2 bands. You can change the thickness of the band too. This is a 1/2 inch band. We can go up to a 1 inch band. So if Ryan was going to do it, I'd probably prescribe a 1 inch band for him. Nothing against you, Ash.
Right.
Okay. But we've got like I said, a 1-arm band press with a 1-arm band row. So Ryan's going to anchor down this band for the rowing part of it. And then you can have a partner that's going to anchor down the other side too, or you can just wrap it around something like we've done on the sled here. So Ashley's going to get in a really good athletic stance, and we'll call our symmetrical stance, our base position. And the reason that I love this exercise is because it's almost as much core as it is a push and a pull. Okay, so again, thinking the target, the emphasis of this circuit is a ton of core, a lot of lower body, but this is really our kind of one upper body exercise, but it's just as much core as it is press. So Ashley's gonna demonstrate here. She's gonna pull with her left arm, press with her right, really concentrating on keeping ribs down, pelvis up here, so our core is really isolated, engaged. And then you can kind of see at the top there, there's a little bit of rotation, which is just gonna kick on a little bit extra core there. So we'll usually go 10 reps per side here. She would do 10, pressing with the right, pulling with the left, and then we would switch that and do 10 on the other side. Okay, and then the progression to this, if you don't have bands, Ryan's gonna demonstrate here with a renegade row. So you got a couple dumbbells at home. Ryan's just gonna do a push-up, and then as he goes to the top of the push-up, he's gonna row on his left side or his right side. There we go. And then he's gonna do another rep on the other side. And we're just gonna do, for every push-up, you've got a row on each side. The goal on this one, again, a ton of core in this, is to imagine there's a glass of water or your favorite IPA on your back there, and you wanna make sure that that glass of beer or water is not gonna spill off your back there. So trying to really think about a ton of core, just like the band push and pull there. Keep going, Ryan. Okay, so the next exercise is targeting all lower half. When we're thinking lower body training, right, in a perfect world, we want to think about kind of checking 3 different boxes. We want to have a single leg movement, okay, where, you know, a rear foot elevated split squat would be kind of one of our all-time favorites. Again, thinking bang for your buck exercise here, we're going to do a lunge matrix. But that's going to be our single leg, right? A lunge is a unilateral single leg movement. So that's the 1 box check. We want to do a frontal plane movement, okay? So a lateral squat. You know, most squats and lunges are in what we call the sagittal plane. Everything's moving forward. The next box, like I said, we want to make sure we cover a frontal plane movement. And then the 3rd box we check, we want to make sure we isolate our posterior chain, which we're going to do a little bit later. So Ashley's going to demonstrate this lunge matrix, which checks 2 of our 3 boxes. We're doing a single leg movement, and we're also going to do a frontal plane movement. So what she's going to do is on the left side, she's going to do a forward lunge, immediately followed by a lateral lunge, immediately followed by a reverse lunge. And she's going to do 5 reps per side. Okay, so go ahead, Ash. And this would be with just her own body weight here, and Ryan will demonstrate with weights if you have them. Good, so there's 1 rep, she go again.
Switch sides.
Yep, we'll switch to the other side. Lateral lunge. You notice on the lateral lunge, go back to the lateral lunge here, Ash. Sorry, lateral, out to the side there. So on this side, this leg is perfectly straight, okay? And we wanna make sure that on this side, her knee and her toe are stacked. Oftentimes what we see is this knee inside the toe, and Ashley does a great job of stacking those and aligning knee on top of the toe, okay? This leg is straight, this toe is forward, and the common mistake we see on a lateral lunge is not stepping wide enough, and that's where you're gonna have that kind of valgus knee collapse there, okay? Good, and then Ryan will demonstrate these with, if you have a couple kettlebells at home, If you got a backpack or you got a small child, you can just front load anything there to load the exercise. So same thing, forward lunge, lateral lunge, and then the reverse lunge. And Ryan does a great job with this front rack hold where he's got elbows high. And again, what we're always thinking about is how can we challenge the core? And that's gonna be, in the front rack hold, is gonna be a lot more challenging for the core versus if we just did like a farmer's carry hold. So that's the reason we wanna go front rack. Okay, the next exercise is what we call our hollow hold band series, okay? So when we're thinking about targeting our core, we look at it two different ways that we typically train our core. We're trying to resist flexion and extension, so that's a lot of planks, hollow holds, where we want to maintain a neutral lumbar spine, okay? So we're resisting that spine flexion or resisting that spine extension. And then the other way that we'll show you later on is what we call an anti-rotational core exercise, where we're resisting rotation, okay? And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So another good bang for your buck exercise here with this hollow hold band series, where we're again targeting the core, specifically anti-flexion and extension. We're also getting a ton of hip, right? We hear a lot from our snowboarders that the first couple weeks they're on the mountain, their hip flexors, their hip abductors are super fatigued. So this is a good one that we're gonna get into, like I said, killing two birds with one stone with a lot of core and a lot of hips. Okay, so Ryan's gonna show us here with no resistance, where he's gonna be set up in this hollow hold position. We wanna make sure that his low back is flat, flush with the floor here. Okay, so what we're trying to create is a neutral lumbar spine position where, again, we're resisting that flexion and extension of the spine. Okay, the further he reaches arms and legs to the ground, the harder this is gonna be, the harder it's gonna be to keep that low back flat. The further he comes up, the easier it's gonna be. So he's gotta find a position that's gonna work for him and he's able to maintain that flat low back. We're gonna start with abductions. Okay, so Ryan's gonna just start with legs perfectly straight and just separate his leg, right? So we're using the abductors of the hip to pull our legs straight out. We would prescribe 10 reps of each of these, okay? We're just gonna do a couple here. Now we're gonna go into the flutters, okay? So now we're focusing a little bit more hip flexor. Good, and then last one, we'll do our runners here, where again, we'll be isolating a little bit more hip flexor there. Good, and again, we prescribe 10 reps of each of those movements, and then Ashley's gonna demonstrate here with the resistance of the mini band, okay? Same thing. Ashley finds her position that is gonna allow her to keep a neutral spine. And again, focusing on the hip, the abductors of the hip here. We'll do a couple reps there, and then we'll go into our flutters. Legs are straight. The whole time we're thinking about pulling our ribs down, pulling our pelvis up, and then we're gonna finish with the runners there. So she'll put the band across her shoelaces there and the bottom of her feet. And nice job on that pause on each movement. It's easy just to go rip out 10 reps, okay? But we wanna think about being slow and controlled and owning each position there. Good, Ash. Okay, so this next exercise, we call it a Copenhagen. Who knows why it's called a Copenhagen? I still don't know. It's more of kind of a, you see this exercise used in soccer a lot, but for skiers and snowboarders and just all of our athletes, this is something that we use a lot just to isolate, again, the abductor or the adductors and the growing. There's plenty of research out there that shows the direct correlation between weak growing and adductors that leave you more susceptible to knee injuries. So this is, again, an exercise where we're gonna try to strengthen that area that's hopefully gonna keep our knees a little bit healthy while we're skiing up on the hill there. So Ashley's gonna demonstrate, there's 3 different levels here on this, where the first level is gonna be a bent knee position. She's gonna be down on her elbow, okay? And we're gonna be, you really ultimately are using both legs here to get yourself into this position. So bottom leg is straight, so her left adductors and groin are working, and then obviously the right one's working the most here. So this is level 1, where our lever is just a little bit shorter, okay? Moving to level 2, she's just gonna get a little bit longer, lengthen her lever here, and make it a little bit more challenging, where just like her shin is on the box or the bench, or if you're at home, you can just use a chair or the couch there, okay? So level 2 here. Good, and try to straighten this leg, Ash. Perfect. So you see how, again, both adductors and groin, they're working here. Level 2, lever is lengthened a little bit, so it becomes a little bit harder. Then relax, level 3, she just moves out further, okay? And now we're only on our foot, which is gonna isolate everything a little bit more intense there. And so we usually prescribe holding this for 15 to 20 seconds per side. Ashley's doing great. I'll just keep talking so she can get her little bit of growing work in. Good job. All right, so the other box that we're looking to check, like we talked about earlier when we're training our lower body, is isolating our posterior chain, right? Our biggest, strongest muscles in our body, our glutes, and then our hamstrings, okay? So like I talked about, we did our lunge, our single leg, that was the first box. We did frontal plane with the lateral lunge, that lunge matrix, checked both those boxes. Now we're checking our third box here, where we're gonna isolate. This is gonna be more hamstring than glute. Okay, so Ryan's gonna start, you can do these at home with, if you have furniture sliders or if you have hardwood, you can just put your feet on a towel here. We're gonna talk through a couple different variations of this. So Ryan will start with his heels at his butt, okay? And he's gonna bridge his hips. The first variation of this is of the kind of regressed movement here is he's only gonna work the eccentric portion of this, where he's gonna slide his heels out as slow as he can, keeping his hips high, okay? Then he'll put his butt down on the ground, okay? And then he'll pull his feet back in while his butt's on the ground. Now we'll do working eccentrically and concentrically, where again, hips are high, he's gonna slide out eccentrically, and then he's gonna keep his hips high as he pulls back in concentrically there, okay? So we'll do a couple more reps here. We wanna make sure as we bridge up, we keep our ribs down here and we don't throw our ribs forward into that extended lumbar position. Good, so this is really gonna isolate your hamstrings. If you feel like your hamstring's about to cramp, probably go back a level there and just work the eccentric portion of it, okay? And then the next exercise, we'll do a little partner glute ham raise or Nordic hamstring curls, some people refer to them. Ashley's gonna get set up here on the pad, knees on the pad, and this is one that you can do really anywhere. And this is why I like this. You can be out on a field, you can do this at home. All you need is a partner, okay? So Ryan's gonna anchor down her feet. Ashley's gonna stay in a stacked alignment here, where she's head, shoulder, hip, knee, stacked alignment, and she's gonna lower herself slowly to the ground, really using her hamstrings, really gonna isolate those hamstrings a lot here. She's gonna catch herself with her hands, push up, and then finish with her hamstrings there. So the more she pushes, right, the easier it is. The less she pushes, the more her hamstrings have got to help herself get back up to the top. Okay, go do one more, Ash. Slow, slow, slow on the way down, and then push, there you go, and finish with those hamstrings. Perfect. So the next core exercise that we're gonna do is an anti-rotational core exercise. So we call this an iso PALLOF press hold. So traditional PALLOF press is just where it's anchored down and you're pressing out. The further your hands get away from your body, the more it's wanting to rotate, okay? So Ryan's gonna get set up here, and like I said, when we're training our core, we wanna think about checking a couple boxes there. We wanna resist anti-flexion extension, we wanna resist rotation, and then third, we're gonna demonstrate a couple exercises where we're actually rotating. So Ashley and Ryan are gonna demonstrate this exercise. Ryan's gonna just get set up in a really good athletic position, and then we got a band, and Ashley's just gonna kind of walk side to side. Come over here a little bit further, Ashley, too. So we really wanna get on the side here where it's trying to pull him into rotation, okay? And Ryan's just trying to really resist that rotation, okay? Then she'll just kind of walk side to side. And we go about 15 to 20 seconds per side where Ryan's just locked in here. He's in a good athletic position. He kind of looks like he's on a snowboard right there. And Ashley's just gonna make it as hard as she wants for him. Good, okay, and then the other side of this, that was a demonstration of resisting rotation. And then again, for a lot of our snowboarders, when guys that are performing tricks and twists and everything, we wanna actually start training more rotation. So we wanna resist rotation first, and then we wanna get into some rotation. So if Ryan and I were gonna pass this ball back and forth, we can do a couple different things here. If we're gonna stand shoulder to shoulder here, what we would do here, ideally you wanna throw this against a hard wall so you can really chuck it. But what I'm gonna do is just like a hip toss here, when I'm gonna load it up on my hip, and then I'm gonna pass it over to Ryan, then Ryan's gonna do the same thing, okay? And then we can get a little bit further apart and throw it a little bit harder. And you can see how I kind of load my hips and my legs like I'm about to wind up into a jump off of a ramp there. Good, so there's a ton of different medicine ball throws. If you have a medicine ball throw, you can even just stand outside and throw this thing for distance if you don't have a hard wall to throw that into.
All right, well, I just wanted to thank all of you guys for watching today. Hopefully you guys found some of these movements and exercises and really training tips that are gonna really allow for you to excel right out of the gate this season, rather than spending the first 2 months of the season trying to get your legs underneath you. Huge thanks to Ashley for being one of our fitness models. Huge thanks to Kevin, Boss Sports Performance. If you live in Bend, come check them out. It's an incredible place, and they offer a lot of different trainings to be able to get you prepared on even a higher level for the season. And again, really appreciate it. Thank you.